And you're live. Greetings, true Yarans, and welcome to Yaravision, the only news network in Yara that you can trust. I'm Eurogamer's Ian Higton, and in today's piece of definitely not propaganda, I'll be attempting to predict the events of Far Cry 6 based on my knowledge of previous games in the series and all of the recently released Far Cry 6 gameplay. Now, although a lot of what follows will be guesswork and theories on my part, and whilst all of the footage in this video is freely available to view on the internet, I must warn you that, if I'm correct, this whole investigation could potentially be one big story spoiler for Far Cry 6. So, only advance past this point if you're willing to take that risk and prove yourself to be a true Yaran. Long live El Presidente! Okay, if you've been paying attention to Far Cry 6 since its announcement, you'll have already seen this trailer, which introduced us to Anton Castillo and his son Diego for the very first time. If my guesses are correct, this will be the first thing that happens right at the start of the game, for reasons that I'll explain later. So for now, I'll just let this play out so you can get a refresher course on their rather strained father-son relationship.
Our country is like this grenade, except it has two basic parts. Our people and you must clutch them nice and tight, or we all go boom. Understand now. Prove it.
So, what happens at the end of this sequence in the full game? Is this moment left as a cliffhanger like it is here in this trailer, or does it go further? Well, going by clues I'll point out later on, I think Diego does drop that grenade onto the rioters below. Not only that, but I think his doing so will kickstart the events of the entire game. So it'll go grenade drop, explosion, and then it'll cut to the cinematic title sequence. Along with the cutscene we just watched, this sequence was one of the first pieces of Far Cry 6 footage to be released into the wild, and at first glance there's relatively little in here that points to major events in the game's plot. Or is there? We'll come back to this in a bit, because if my theory works out, there's a lot more going on here than we may have first thought. So give it a watch and pay extra special attention to anything red.
Fucking say something.
Right, so I'm going to guess that this scene is the very next one to happen after the intro cinematic, and this will occur just after you've chosen what sex your Dani will be. This Dani is currently on a rooftop with her friends, whom we'll soon come to discover are called Lita and Alejo. This will be a brief period of calm before the prologue really kicks off with a bang. Many bangs, in fact. But before we get into that, we need to establish why these three are gathered on a rooftop in the first place. The hanging lights and the distant music and singing might suggest at first glance that perhaps they're at a rooftop party in Yara's capital city of Esperanza, but the weird ID that Dani's holding in her hand at the start here gives us a clue as to what is actually happening. We don't get to see the full text of the ID in this shot, but this screen grab taken from the 30-minute countdown animation from the worldwide gameplay reveal and a quick trip to Google Translate tells us that this card is Dani's conscription to rebuild paradise. But what does that mean? Well, I think this is the start of Anton's attempt to go full dictator and seize control of Yara. If my theory is correct, these cards will be given out to all citizens of Yara over a certain age, and they're basically army conscription cards. Anton is turning the citizens of Yara into his own personal army, under the guise of returning the country to his interpretation of the Paradise Island that it once was. But it might come as a surprise to learn that returning Yara to its former glory might not be Anton's only goal here. He needs his personal army for something else too, but this is something that'll come up later. The main takeaway at this point though is that I believe that this national conscription is the cause for all the rioting and dissent that we saw in that very first intro cutscene. Okay, so this next theory is a big guess, but there's a few hints coming up later that help reinforce my idea that at around this point we might get your classic Finnish Far Cry early choice. Just like the Crab Rangoon scene in Far Cry 4 or the handcuffing scene in Far Cry 5, there may be a way to complete Far Cry 6 by ignoring instructions and doing literally nothing. From what I can gather from some upcoming footage, Lita on the right here wants to join Libertad, the guerrilla group run by Clara Garcia, more on her later, whilst Alejo here on the left is all set on escaping Anton's conscription by evacuating Yara and escaping to America. The choice Dani makes for the main story to play out will become apparent soon, but perhaps there's a third choice. Perhaps there's a do-nothing choice where instead of siding with Alejo or Lita, perhaps you can just sit back, wait and join Anton's army via the conscription card. Cut to credits. But that doesn't happen here. What happens next, I think, is that Anton sends his full army out to crush the rebellion and enact martial law, resulting in these scenes as Dani makes her way over Esperanza's rooftops, watching chaos unfold as she does so.
Where the fuck are the police? They're just letting the military come in to murder us? Animales.
Next up, we'll see Dani wander through the ruins of Yara, looking at bodies of dead protesters as someone tries to talk her into fighting Castillo. Dani wants to escape, she's dead set on it in fact, but the second voice we're hearing is trying to convince her to stay and fight.
It's by turning us against each other.
You know what? Fuck Castillo. And fuck Yara.
Looks like his plan worked on you too.
God, what the fuck? Who are they?
Protesters, artists, journalists.
Why we have to leave?
You and I are the lucky ones, Dani.
Now, in a previous video, I thought that the second voice here might have belonged to Clara Garcia, Libertad's leader. But now I think that it might actually belong to Lita instead, and I think that here, Dani and Lita are still arguing about the best course of action, fight or flight.
Fuck Castillo. And fuck Yara.
Looks like his plan worked on you too.
Now this next bit gets very guessy, but in this quick clip from the introducing Dani Rojas trailer, we see Dani jumping on a horse by Anton's statue and then riding off. This is a statue she walked by when talking to the person who I believe was Lita, and not the statue that was toppled in the intro cutscene. The camera then quickly cuts to another nighttime shot of Dani riding a horse through a burning Yara. But unless there was a bit of a cock-up with the character model here, I think that these two shots are actually taken from different times. You see, in the first shot here, Dani is not wearing a Supremo backpack, but in the shot immediately after, she is, and as far as I can tell, she won't get a Supremo backpack until much later on. But anyway, ignoring that second shot, I figured that at some point just after the initial attack and Dani and Lita's chat, there must be something that happens that causes Dani to need to race to the escape boat. But what might that be? Well, in the brand new E3 trailer called Meet the Villain Anton Cinematic, we might have an answer, as this cinematic begins when Dani reaches that escape boat. But, as you can see, she's now only with Lita. Alejo is nowhere to be seen.
Marco! Always making new friends.
Dani, you're late. Where's Alejo?
He gave up his ticket. For his family.
Bullshit. Alejo is an orphan.
Alejo's not going anywhere anymore.
Now, Alejo's not going anywhere anymore is as good a sign as any that Alejo is dead. But how did he die? There's a clue about that coming up, but for now at least, it's very much worth pointing out that, due to Dani's pleading here, Marco lets the old woman and the young boy with the baseball cards onto the boat in Alejo's place. With the boat heading out across the sea to safety now, Lita once again argues with Dani about fighting and not running to the safety of America. On the strength of her convictions here, I believe that Lita must know Clara Garcia and Libertad, or at least she's heard of them and knows of some way to contact them.
This isn't right, Dani. We should be fighting, not running to the Yankees.
Alejo gave you a fucking gift, Lita. We survive. Same as the orphanage, same as the academy.
So, Alejo gave Lita a gift, eh? Well, this is as good a clue as any that Alejo may have sacrificed himself so that Dani and Lita could escape. This might suggest why Lita went to the boat in the first place, even though she seems utterly opposed to it.
What's that?
Please, no, this is a fishing boat. Dios mío, no!
Next up, the boat is boarded by Anton, one of his generals, that one that wears the cowboy hat, and some of his soldiers. This marks the first but not the last time that Dani will see Anton in person during the events of Far Cry 6.
And we would catch the fish and then release them. He would say, it's not always about your stomach, mijo. It's about the challenge. Except when he caught a big, fat, juicy marlin, he was too proud to let that fish go.
Tirano! You have poisoned Yara! You have poisoned your sword!
I have caught a very big fish today. Haven't I, Diego? Diego!
No way.
Surprise! It turns out that the boy with the baseball cards is actually Diego Castillo, who, despite wearing a different t-shirt, is wearing the same hoodie from the intro cutscene. My guess is that the grenade drop was the last straw for Diego, and because he was forced to do it, he decided to escape, perhaps with the help of the old woman who rushes to his aid here. It almost feels like we should know this old lady a bit more than we do so here, so perhaps there's a section where we see Diego's initial escape happen in more detail. That's all speculation though, and in all honesty, there's probably just an extra scene on the boat with the old lady chatting to Dani or something. This next bit though is super important, and it's basically the plot point that the majority of my story theory hangs on, so pay extra attention to what Diego says next.
Let them go. They can work. Make Viviro.
Truth or lies?
There it is, Viviro. This is 100% Far Cry 6's version of Far Cry 5's Bliss Drug, and it's gonna be the root of all evil in regards to Castillo's plans. And it's also blatantly going to give us an excuse to have one of Far Cry's famous drug trip missions too.
What are you afraid of? You're a natural.
Viviro can fill in all the holes we have about Far Cry's plot so far, with a little wiggling. So let's try, hey? First up, what is Viviro? Well, remember when I told you to pay special attention to anything red in the cinematic title sequence? Well, in this theory, the drug Viviro is red. When I first saw these leaves here in the cinematic title sequence, I automatically thought that they were tobacco leaves, due to the fact that the trailer fades to them from a cigar shot, and Yara's basically Cuba and all. But then we see a blood red colour seeping through the veins of these leaves, and then the camera zooms right into the vein, and then the camera fades again to a series of drug production images. There's a needle injecting a substance into a cell, a centrifuge, and then, finally, drugs. So, if I'm correct, this answers the next question, which is, why, if Anton is El Presidente already, does he even need to seize control of Yara in the first place? Well, if Anton has found a way to synthesize a new type of drug that can only be made using a plant native to Yara, chances are he's been selling it to America and other places around the world, and they're not happy about it. This drug has enabled Anton to amass an absolute fortune, but because of the way it's been poisoning people, America, and maybe many other countries around the world too, have put sanctions on Yara, causing everything but Castillo's drug-bought tower and army to slowly crumble away. But that's not all there is to Viviro, because, and this is all about the red again, you will see a lot of recurring images of red smoke throughout the majority of Far Cry 6's trailers. My thoughts here are that, just like Joseph Seed and his Bliss Angels in Far Cry 5, Anton will be using Viviro to control the population of Yara and convert them to his cause. This shot of a soldier in a gas mask spraying red smoke and this shot of 3 crop dusters dropping red smoke could easily be explained as methods used by Anton's army to brainwash the more uncooperative elements in Yara. In fact, the old lady who tries to protect Diego does say, "You've poisoned Yara," just before she dies, and this could easily be a reference to the drug Viviro.
You have poisoned Yara! You have poisoned your sword!
So, kind of unimaginatively, drugs seem to be the main plot device of a Far Cry game once again. But how on earth does Dani get involved with everything anyway? Well, the Anton cinematic trailer ends with a cut to black, just as things are about to get really nasty. But in the Introducing Dani Rojas trailer, we get to see and hear a few seconds of what happens next. The soldiers open fire, Dani drops to the floor, and presumably everybody around her, including Lita, for added character motivation of course, gets killed. What happens next will probably be your classic pass out and wake up in a safe place scenario that also happens quite a lot in Far Cry games, and here I'm going to assume that somehow Dani will wake up on or be brought to Isla Santuario here, where the next scene happens.
You're an orphan, see? Funny how friends can be closer than family. Remember, Dani, Castillo has kept you an orphan. Why do you want to run?
I watched Castillo order a whole boat of our people shot to death. Get as far away as you can from that psychopath. All of you.
When tyranny is law, revolution is order.
Quoting Bolivar won't save you.
It's Pedro Albizu.
Gonna save Yara with library cards.
I have a list.
If you've not watched my 101 Details in Far Cry 6 video, I've already theorised that Isla Santuario here is Far Cry 6's tutorial island, the place where, after the prologue, Dani will learn all about the guerrilla group Libertad and meet all of its members. It's still night time at this point, so I'm gonna guess that this scene here is probably happening on the same night as the botched escape, but this here is Dani's first meeting with Clara Garcia and Libertad.
I watched Castillo order a whole boat of our people shot to death.
I'm not 100% sure why Dani is angry enough with Clara to be pointing a gun at her though. I think maybe once Dani wakes up at the Libertad camp she might panic and try to escape, and then everyone tries to stop her? That would kind of make sense considering everything that's said here.
Why do you want to run?
From here, it's safe to assume that, due to the need for revenge, and because all of her old friends have got killed, Dani decides to join Libertad. My guess is that this is where the prologue ends and the true game then begins. But you'll have to wait until next week for my theories on that part, and oh lordy do I have some theories. In the meantime, while you're waiting, what do you think about my theories so far? Perhaps I've missed something completely obvious, or maybe you've spotted something that will back my theories up. As always, let everyone know in the comments below, and maybe we can unravel this mystery before it's even begun. Anyway, big thanks for checking out this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for loads more Far Cry 6 coverage coming up on this channel very soon, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Team Eurogamer, where you'll get daily updates about videos we have coming out, when we're doing live streams, and glimpses behind the scenes. Oh, and if you're feeling really fancy, you can always become a member of this channel and get exclusive access to the Team Eurogamer Discord channel, where you'll find a huge amount of chat channels to hang out in, and more importantly, lots of photos of people's pets. Right, it's time for me to head off and go through the rest of these Far Cry trailers with a fine tooth comb. So check out some of these other Far Cry theory videos that are on screen right now if you want more of the same, and I'll see you next week for Supremos, Amigos, and mid-game plot twists. Goodbye.